Good evening. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for November 5th, 2013. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Colin McNabb, present.
Bob Lamont, present.
Sue Licio, present. I'd like to make notice that this meeting is being tape recorded. Chairman's additions or deletions, I have none. Andy, we have none, right?
No, this is 4.3, is that?
That's just back up.
Okay, I was just back
But
up.
it was already on there. Review and approve meeting minutes for October 22nd, 2013.
I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for October 22nd, 2013.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on it? Not. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an appointment or a hearing at 7:15, but we're going to wait a few minutes in case there are others that want to make it. So we're going to go ahead. 3.1, request from the Lions Club for a license to sell Christmas trees at the rear of the Townsend Common from November 29th, 2013 to December 24th, 2013.
Like a motion? I make a motion that we approve the Lions Club request for a license to sell Christmas trees at the rear of the Townsend Common from November 29, 2013 to December 24, 2013.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3.2, request from the Abram S. French Fund Committee to transfer $2,700 from available funds to the Abram S. French Fund to provide assistance to families in need.
I make a motion that we approve the request from the Abram S. French Fund Committee to transfer $2,700 from available funds to the Abram S. French Fund to provide assistance to families in need.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 3.3, review and approve letter of appreciation to Sterilite Corporation for donation of shelving units for the Town Hall Annex.
Just a little backup on this one, Sue. I think we talked about this recently. Karen reached out to Sterilite and made a request of them for some shelving units for the old annex building, the building we refer to both as the former town hall annex and the old bank building, the brick building out in front. We're going to use that, as I mentioned in the past, for record storage. We're a little tight on storage space here, so we're cleaning that up a bit. And Karen reached out to Sterilite, and Sterilite was generous enough to donate 20 sets of shelving units to us for
Very
that.
nice.
So just wanted to acknowledge that in letter form from the board.
Gladly sign that one. Comments?
Thank you.
Colin?
Make a motion that we approve the letter of appreciation to Sterilite Corporation for donation of shelving units for the Town Hall Annex.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Much appreciated. Thank you again.
Again, what can we say?
Thank you very much.
Three 3.4, request to close Town Hall on November 29th, 2013. Mr. Sheehan.
This is something that the board has done for all of the years that I've worked here, and it predates my arrival. Allows the town hall to close on the day after Thanksgiving. It tends to be a very quiet day anyways in terms of municipal activity, and it's a nice benefit to the employees to be able to take that day off, make a 4-day weekend. The caveat being that they can use accrued time, vacation, or personal time for that. They cannot use sick time, but they can use other accrued time on that day.
Yeah, this has been fairly traditional the past couple of years. And
Yes.
as you said, they use their own personal time, so it's not an issue in terms of the town losing out on any money.
Correct.
I've always supported it.
Colin?
I make a motion that we vote to close Town Hall on November 29th, 2013.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Point 5, request to reclassify the health administrator from grade T3 to grade T4. Do you want to take, is this one going to take? No.
No, this should be pretty quick. As the board will recall, we had a meeting or two a couple of months ago with the Board of Health regarding their health administrator. They asked that the board consider reclassifying the position. Had talked to the board about changes to the job description that they thought merited an increase. The board agreed to send that out to HRS, our Human Resources Consultant. HRS came back with the memo that I have in front of you tonight, recommending a 1-grade increase from grade 3 to grade 4. And so in keeping with that, assuming that the board would be agreeable to that, that would be an increase of about $630 over the course of the full year.
Okay. And how does that get funded, Andy?
We actually have an article on town meeting for this one. We had put a placeholder on some months ago when we knew this was going to come up. This actually came up, I think, in June, May or June. It was in the prior year, and we didn't have any way to fund it at that point. And so we knew that it wouldn't go into effect until after town meeting in the fall.
Okay.
So this would be subject to the appropriation.
I don't have any problem with this.
No.
I mean, based
No. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
No, I don't have any problem. I mean, it's not a significant amount of money, and we've relied on Human Resources Services, Inc. to do the study, and I think we need, in the terms of consistency, I think we need to follow the recommendation. I think they've been given ample information and justification for the increase. It's not a staggering amount, obviously, so I would support this.
I agree.
Okay, so it appears that HRS believes that this is a more equitable position compared to the other positions in town.
Yeah, she acknowledged that there were a couple of elements in the job description that are different from the other positions in grade 3 where she is currently classified, that distinguish her from a grade 3 position.
Okay. We have a motion?
I make a motion that we reclassify the health administrator from a grade T3 to grade T4.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I think 3.6 will take a few minutes, so it may be worthwhile to jump over that
Okay,
and do the appointments and other things, and then come back to 3.6 after the cable meeting.
okay. 4.1, we'll jump down to. Request to appoint Edward Herman to the Energy Committee for a term from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2015. Yes.
I make a motion that we appoint Edward Herman to the Energy Committee for a term from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2015. Oh, sorry, November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2015.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.2, request to appoint the following to the Council on Aging for the terms noted. Sandra Stevens, November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2016. Valerie Adams, November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2015. Paul Bolduc from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. I'm sorry, Pauline.
I make a motion that we appoint the following to the Council on Aging for terms. Sandra Stephen from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2016. Valerie Adams from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2015, and Pauline Bolduc from November 5th, 2013 to June 30th, 2014.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4.3, request to appoint interim town treasurer. Mr. Sheehan.
I put a memo in front of the board tonight. We advertised about a month ago for an interim town treasurer in light of the announced retirement of Kathy Rossback. We received at least 9. I actually think that a couple more came in the last day or so. So more than 10 applicants for the position. Kim Fales and Vicki Tidman and I sat down with the 2 that really rose to the top, and the 2 that had treasurer experience in Massachusetts, and interviewed those 2 individuals. And we were unanimous in our opinion that Kate Stacy was the best candidate for the position and the one that we would recommend to the board. Kate has been the treasurer in Ashby for about 10 years. She's elected there as the treasurer. She's in her 4th term, and has a thorough grasp of the job. It's a job that is transferable from one community to another. If you can do it here, you can essentially do it anywhere. And checked references as well. A couple of people that I know that worked with her in the past or work with her currently, and all the recommendations came back glowing. So,
Excellent.
so we recommend the hiring of Kate at a rate of $25.73 per hour. And that's consistent with the comp and class plan.
So you would like a motion with her name included?
Yes.
Colin?
I make a motion that we appoint Kate Stacy as the interim town treasurer.
Seconded.
I have a question. Is there a time frame?
For how long the position will last as an interim, you mean?
Beginning and end, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to work out the details in terms of her starting date, but she's going to retain her position in Ashby and work here as well, so it should be fairly quick to get her in here. And then the duration will depend on a number of factors, one being the action on Beacon Hill from the legislature to approve the conversion of the collector from an elected to an appointed position. We're staying on top of that, but there's been little action recently on that. It's stuck in, I believe it's in the Committee on Third Readings at the moment, so.
Is that not where bills go to die?
No,
No.
no.
Hopefully it's the last.
Third reading should be the last reading.
Third reading,
Yes,
okay. I
it
guess
should
when I
be-
hear
it should be
the phrase
okay
like
and
third
sign
reading,
after
sounds
that.
like let's file this.
No, that's when it goes
Oh,
into,
4th reading.
That's when it goes to study.
that's when it goes into study.
Okay.
So,
I just want to be clear.
So we're
No,
still
third
hopeful
reading is a
that,
good thing.
Doesn't sound good.
we're still hopeful that we'll get that legislation approved this calendar year and be able to then move forward on deciding what to do with the 2 positions, whether we want to formally combine them, keep them separate, do something else. So.
Yeah, and hopefully Rep. Harrington
Yeah.
can push that through.
And they are working hard. I've been working with Caitlin Heislip at Representative Harrington's office, and she's been very helpful. It's just a process that can be hard to
Gotta
predict.
Squeeze it in there, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's perfect.
Right on us.
It's, so we have a cable television public hearing, and Colin's going to read that. Is there a sign up?
We've already sent it around. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Townsend, as issuing authority for a cable television license under Mass General Law, Chapter 166A, will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 5th, 2013, at 7:15 p.m. in the Selectmen's Chambers, 272 Main Street, Townsend. For the purpose of the public hearing will be to determine whether to issue a cable television license to Comcast. All applications, reports, statements, and license drafts to be considered at the hearing that constitute public records under state law are available for public inspection during regular business hours and for reproduction at a reasonable fee. Members of the public are invited to attend and can be heard on the topic A, whether the current cable operator is in full compliance with its currently existing cable license, and B, what are the town's future community cable-related needs?
And Andy, we just need to officially open the hearing.
Correct, open the hearing, and then I can give a little background, and then I think I'll turn it over to the committee.
Okay. Call the hearing
Call the hearing to order?
to order.
Okay. We did this, we did a hearing on the Comcast renewal about a year, maybe a little more than a year ago. We had Bill Hewig from Copeland and Page here, our counsel on this issue. Bill is one of the lead attorneys in Massachusetts in terms of telecommunications and the cable industry. We got some input at that time from the public, and from that hearing, the cable committee was put together. Prior to that, we didn't have a committee in place. The hearing brought out a number of individuals that are interested in the, or I suppose are most interested in the cable franchise renewal, and a number of them opted to join the committee that was formed shortly thereafter. So, Stan or Steve, I don't know if you guys want to
Sure.
talk about what's next, and then the board will just be
Before we do anything, we need to call our committee officially reconvene. We met downstairs, we adjourned, we're going to come back into session because we have a quorum and we are discussing official business. So call the meeting, call the cable committee meeting back at 7:18. Kathy's our stenographer. She does a great job. Do you want me to adjust some things?
Sure.
Okay. Hartley, am I potted up here? Sure. Prop me up. I'm going to hold this so that it's not going to be so echoey. Let's see, my name is Steve Cloutier, and I'm the chairperson of the Cable Committee. And why don't the committee introduce themselves here?
Stan Dillis.
Jerry Brissette.
John D'Angelillo.
Kathleen Spofford.
And we also have from Comcast, we have Jane Wyman and Ben Perlman. Ben is brand new, so welcome to it. Did you just join Comcast, or are you just joining this group in Comcast?
No, just joined Comcast.
Oh, so you're really new. Oh, well, you're in good hands with Jane. Okay, the purpose of the public hearing, as was already read, is to take input about the cable renewal license. The license is good for 10 years. The license has expired that we have with Comcast. However, we are on an extension, so there's no problem with that. This is a very customary procedure. So this meeting was well advertised. And are there any members of the public here, if you just show of hands, who are here for the public hearing with respect to Comcast? Okay, great. So we do have some other members of the public besides the Cable Committee. Some of the issues that we're dealing with, just to sort of let folks know. Thank you. What many people may not know is that we have a public access TV studio in town, which in fact is currently paid for by Comcast from cable revenue. This studio is paid only by cable subscribers. It is not paid for by the taxpayers of Townsend. And this has been in place for a couple of decades anyway. Hartley Pleshaw, who's not visible, but he's behind the camera, actually operates that. And we have also a government channel, which is Channel 9, so anybody watching this program on television right now is enjoying Channel 9, and that is also paid for from cable revenue. So this is all sort of a self-supporting thing. So that's one of the, oh, you know, if Gene Rahola were here, what he'd do. So,
My apologies.
that's okay. One of the things that we'll be discussing on the renewal is the future of public access. It has been fairly well received in town. It's well used. If the Access Studio is off the air, we hear about it. So we know people are watching it. And what technologies we might want to add to that. And another issue that we have uncovered is that some areas in the town are not cabled, which means cable is unavailable in certain places. So we're working to try to address some of these. And some of the issues are complex. They're technical. They have to deal with infrastructure problems, height of poles, and so on and so forth. However, some of these poles are very old. The utilities are, it's in their best interest to replace some of these poles before there's an outage, when it's very expensive to replace at that point. So we will be working those issues. That's about all that I have as chair. So should we, take questions from?
I have a question.
Sue?
When you said the TV studio as well as the government channel is all paid for through funds that we receive,
Yes.
do we know the amount of the funds that we receive on a yearly basis?
We bring in, last year we brought in about $42,000, or Comcast paid to us about $42,000. That's separate from the funding they put to the studio.
Right.
We get paid as part of the franchise agreement 1.5% of their gross revenues.
Okay, so the $42,000, out of that $42,000, a portion of it pays for the studio and for Channel 9?
Nope, separate from that.
Separate. Yeah, that's an excellent question, though. As Andy said, we get 1.5%, which strictly runs the government channel. I didn't realize it was actually that high. That's an accurate figure. And the rest of it is in a line item on the cable bill called franchise-related costs, or FRC. And that actually pays for the TV studio. So there are separate line items at the moment, because Comcast physically hires Hartley Plushaw. He is an employee of Comcast and not an employee of the town of Townsend or any other entity in Townsend, whereas the government channel is run by people who are employed or contracted by the town of Townsend. That's a distinct difference.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand. They're separate. The government channel is paid for out of the 1.5%?
No, the 1.5% comes directly to the town, goes into
And
the general
that
fund.
equals the 42,000,
That's the
and that goes into
42,000.
the general fund.
And Comcast, through the studio, pays for the operation of the
channel.
two channels.
Directly, that's right.
Okay.
Now, if we have, just to follow up on this, we have the opportunity at any time to form a nonprofit access corporation, which will run both the public access, which is currently paid for directly by Comcast, and the government channel. And in fact, most municipalities have done this. It's rather rare to find a studio that's still paid for by the cable company, because generally speaking, the public access corporations can do a better job of meeting the needs of the people. And and Comcast wants out of the business. They don't do this. They provide infrastructure, they provide programming, they don't like to run studios.
So I have a question. Is that something that you've looked into?
Yes, we have looked into it, and in the past, we haven't had quite the revenue to support it, but we think we might, at this point, have enough revenue if we get, an appropriate amount, and we could take this over. It is part of our negotiation that we are doing with Comcast right now, where that is one of the negotiating points. I just wanted to mention it.
What's the figure that you feel is necessary to operate a studio independent of
Comcast?
From your,
I can't give you anything super accurate, but we are actually working on a business plan that tells us what we're going to need, but we'd need to pay at least one full-time person, or the equivalent thereof. We'd have to have money to repair the equipment, to replace the equipment, all that sort of stuff. I would assume the high school will still allow us to use the facility rent-free as long as we are providing value back to them and training students and so on that Hartley's involved with. So we'd probably, just a swag to run both channels, you'd probably need somewhere around 90 or 100,000 to run that. That'd be, to do everything. And that's a swag, don't hold me to that, because we're going to do a
Just
business.
looking for a ballpark estimate.
Yeah, maybe even a little more. Once we've,
How viable do you think that plan is?
oh, it's, if we get the money, we can do it. We have to form the nonprofit. We have a board of directors who runs it. I mean, just like all nonprofit organizations, we have employees. I'm familiar with the operations over in Groton, in Fitchburg, Dave Svens, I mean, I actually know him, this is done. The other thing is Ashby has no, they don't have a public access studio. They have been very interested in the past in combining with us. And so we could potentially do something with them. So we get a little more revenue from Ashby as well.
So the purpose of this meeting is to talk about whether or not they're in compliance with the current contract and future needs. So this is something that is open for discussion.
It's absolutely open for discussion. That's why it's a
as a
public
future
hearing.
need. Okay.
Yes. So do we want to take questions from the public? Anybody have any comments or questions? You're all here. You must be here for a reason.
I just have a question. I noticed you mentioned the high school, what you do with the high school, and are there plans in the works to, if we're gonna be building a new high school, to, who's gonna pay for the infrastructure, the television infrastructure in that facility?
Well, that's the question. If we build a new high school, we will, as our public entity, assuming that we had done it, have to talk with the high school and say, do you want to continue providing space for us? If they do, they will have to build a room, which we will then move the equipment that we have currently to that space. There's very little equipment that's actually built in at the high school. It's mostly equipment that's rather portable. We can bring it in, the cameras roll in, the monitors roll in. It's not that big a deal to build. It sounds bigger than it really is. Building a TV studio is not a huge undertaking, particularly to duplicate what we have. And we have the technical experience to actually do that.
I'm not sure, I mean, and I'm embarrassed to say so, but in terms of the details for that, I'm not sure. I know they've talked about it at the building committee meetings. And certainly they're in the design phase right now. But I get confused because of the Pepperell. Pepperell has a piece too, but they have a different cable company.
Yes.
So it's always confusing me as to who does what, where, and how. So,
Pepperell has Charter Communications. So if we form a nonprofit entity, we can feed programming to Charter. They will do this. They've already committed to it. There's dark fiber, there's fiber optic cable in the high school that Charter has run, anticipating that someday we'll form a nonprofit corporation and start feeding programming to them.
I don't know how it fits into the current building plan,
Yeah.
that they're talking
I
about.
presume they would extend that.
I would assume that they want to provide the same things, but,
Yeah, it makes sense.
Steve, assuming that you can reach whatever figure you determine necessary to fund the operation, how would the operation be sustained? In other words, what would you get, what would be the yearly appropriation, or, how would that money, how would that yearly operating cost be generated?
Well, it's from a portion of cable revenue, cable services only. So in other words, telephone is not a cable service. Internet is not a cable service, but television is. Those are cable services. So a little piece of that is paid to in this case, the town or the nonprofit agency or whatever it is, to sustain all these public access facilities.
So that the $42,000 that the town is currently receiving from Comcast, would that not automatically, but that could be dedicated to the operating expenses?
Yeah, so we would probably combine our government channel and our public access to one facility, and all payments will go to that one entity. That's typically how it's done, because there's no reason to have them separated.
Right,
I mean, that's in fact more expensive to have them separated, so why do it?
right. It's not efficient.
Sir?
So Comcast is giving you a percentage of what they take from the town as from subscribers, and they're also paying him separately a salary, or that percentage pays his salary?
There's a different line item called franchise-related costs, which is also in some way a percentage of the cable bills. Jane might be able to explain that a little better because she knows the exact operation, but it's based on the revenue. And that is what pays for Hartley Pleshaw. And the 1.5% just runs the government operation. So right now they're separate. So if we combine them, there would be one figure. It would show up as a franchise fee, and the bills would not change. In other words, if our franchise-related costs would go down, and the franchise fee would go up, and it would be exactly the same as we have today.
So they would roll back his salary into our studio.
Well, that's what's done now. Hartley's salary is in the franchise-related costs. If we form, they are paying. If we formed a nonprofit, we would pay it. Yes. And that money would go, yes, it would come from Comcast.
It would, so essentially, instead of the 45,000 round numbers, and assuming he makes $100,000 a year, we get $150,000.
Whatever the number ends up being, yeah. It's all based on a percentage of cable revenue, and local access tends to generate more cable subscribers, particularly if the programming is good, because people on satellite can't get this.
So your number of about $100,000 to operate the studio isn't far off. I mean, it's not. We're not talking from 49 to 100,000. We're talking about 49 plus whatever his services would cost. So in theory,
The total package of both would probably be, like 150 or something like that, if you look at both the studio and the government operation. Yeah, that would be a realistic number.
Could you just state your name, please?
John, I mean,
John Delaney, thank you.
Anybody else? No? You look like you have a question. No?
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
For some of the people that do not have access to cable, or in those rural areas, and what are the possibilities of getting cable?
Can you tell me on what street you live?
I live on Somerville Road.
Yep. There are two areas, I guess we'll address this. There are two very, what I call hot areas in town. It's actually one area. It's Sauna Road and Vinton Pond. And that section is not currently served by cable due to a number of factors, but the biggest one is the infrastructure. The poles that carry the cable are too low, theoretically. So, but they're very old, and that's what this committee is going to do. In fact, we just met about it. We are going to personally meet with Unitil. They own the poles. First thing we're going to do is find out what the situation is with that. We're going to get a price. If we had to, what the poles are going to cost to replace. And we're not going to pay this in any way necessarily, but we at least want to know where they're coming from. There are approximately 16 poles that would have to be looked at, replaced, or modified. And we don't like to see large areas of town like that unserved. On the committee, this is a big bugaboo for us right now. It's probably the biggest area. When we renegotiated this last time, which was 11 or 12 years ago, we had a lot of areas in town that didn't have cable. Now we've only got a couple. So we'd like to get these cleaned up and get those people served. So,
Steve, question?
yes.
How many households would you say are uncovered because of technical reasons? In other words, like this woman in the back of the room was, how many households, between Vinton Pond and the other area, would you say are unserved?
I'm going to defer to the people who live there.
We sent out approximately 38 letters. So there's approximately 38 households
Okay.
in that area, and then a little section on Guilford Road.
So probably less than 50?
there.
It's definitely less than 50, but 38 is not, it's not an insignificant,
No, it's not an insignificant
I
number.
mean, when you're dealing with, school children and so on and so forth, I mean, it's not an insignificant number who can't get on the
That
internet.
limits their options in terms of computer
Absolutely.
access.
That's really where it's at,
Right.
Everybody loves TV, but really,
Right.
I thought Colin had a
Sir.
question.
So, just to get back to the 42,000 that we were talking about before, that goes into the general fund, is that currently money that the town can use for any purposes, or is that going specifically to cable-related expenses?
We use a portion of it for technology purposes. 30,000, I believe, in the most recent budget.
It's supposed to be used legally, somebody could press the issue. For, like Andy said, the technology that he's talking about is a legitimate use of that money. And to replace equipment and stuff like that. In other words, that's a very legitimate use.
Could we get clarification on that, please? Because I've been told that, that the money that comes from cable to the town can technically be spent on anything that the town sees fit to spend it on, and that it does not have, it's not earmarked, if you will.
It is it's a bit of a gray area, and as Steve said, most communities, or historically, we've used it for technology-related
To supplement that.
expenses. We supplement. And it's clearly noted as such in the bylaw. There are people in the field, experts in the field, who will say, you can use it for whatever you want to use it for. So we don't use it all, but we do, and what we use, like I said before, for technology purposes.
So what's the balance in the account now, if we don't use it all?
I'm reluctant to guess. It's been a while since I looked at it.
We'd have to look at it.
But the remainder goes into the general fund.
It goes into a dedicated fund, what's called a receipts reserved for appropriation fund.
For instance, if we have to replace equipment for Channel 9 or something like that, that's where the
You
money.
wouldn't have to have a capital expenditure if it was an expensive piece of equipment.
Right, and sometimes it is expensive equipment. It just depends on what it is.
Can you tell me what the process is going forward? I know that you've heard from folks of the community that are interested in being able to get cable. This hearing is to talk about things like that. What's the process going forward? When do we hear again what progress has been made?
I can give you a little overview if you want. What we're going to do next is we have a survey. We have a survey. Hartley, give me the mic here, give me the camera. We are going to publicize this fairly heavily. We have a survey that we would like residents to fill out, even if you don't have cable, about cable. And it's the reason why we need this information is so we will know if the town's needs are being served. We did a survey 11 or 12 years ago during the last renewal. We got a lot of response back. I still have all the data. So we're going to be publicizing this via the email list. We want to use that. We'll be putting it on the website. We're going to advertise it in the newspaper, and we have considered doing a household direct mailing, but we may not have to do that if we can get sufficient publicity through other means, because it is 12 years later. Many people have the internet.
And what kinds of questions would you ask?
I actually have a copy of the survey if you'd like to see it.
I don't need details.
Okay,
just
there
run around.
are questions about, they're like, do you have cable? It's one of the questions. If you do not, why not? A whole bunch of checklists. Everything from I have satellite to it's too expensive, it's not available on my street, whatever. If you do have cable, what services do you use? Big checklist of that sort of thing. I'm kind of looking at the camera here. What programs would you like to see? What kind of things would you like to see? We have that in there. How would you rate the quality of the service? And we have like 10 metrics. Is the customer service good? Is the quality of the picture good? Is the quality of the sound good? So on and so forth. I'm trying to do the camera. So all this. And then we have some demographic information that really helps us in knowing like where the town is going to be going. That was extremely helpful last time. We have things, it's all anonymous, so we have people like, what is your income and so on and so forth. And based on that from last time, we were able to convince AT&T that this would behoove you to do this, because you're going to get all these people, because we have the numbers to back it up. So it's nice to have that. So, stuff like that. So it's a good survey. We got a lot of response. Bill Hewig has looked at it and thought it was pretty good. I spoke with Bill. Bill Hewig is our special counsel for cable, who is part of Copeland and Page. I had a conversation with him about a week and a half ago about this. So and he thought we were doing it correctly.
Anybody else have any input, questions?
Yes, sir.
Maybe I missed the point, but I'm still wondering, is there some program whereby you're going to add poles down to the people that don't have cable?
Where are you living?
Sauna Road.
You're also on Sauna. Okay. Yes, that area, as I say, that area is sort of a little hot button right now. We're really trying to work that. So that's what we're doing. And Comcast is well aware of the situation. We are aware of it, and we're trying to figure out how to get this done. It's a bit of a pointing contest between Unitil saying one thing and Comcast is saying another, but basically they're both saying the poles are too small. We're going to ferret this out. We have a very good committee, and we have some good people on it. Yeah.
The other question I have is about, I don't know how many years ago, but it was stated that if we get 5 people down in that area signed up on and subscribing to the service, they'll put up the pole. Is that something that was in the record or not?
I personally am unaware of that. If it's in the record, I do not know, and I've actually looked through the records, and I don't find that. But that doesn't mean anything. We are going to be going to your neighborhood, finding out how many people want to sign up. We're going to get that number. We're going to give that to the folks that come, because they need that. If we go and say we got 40 new customers to sign up, that's important. That's a lot of money. You figure, the average cable bill is probably 50 or 60 bucks, right? So, we want that. We want the numbers from Unitil. We want to know what we're doing.
Excuse me. The other question I have is that most of the folks that live down at Benton Pond are seasonal. And I know one of the persons that I talked to said, I wonder if we only subscribe for 6 months, is that still available, or do they have to subscribe for a year?
Well, it's probably better if you want to get cable in there and you want to have a good revenue base to sign up, and if you're only there 6, 7, 8 months of the year, pay for it all year. I own a house on an island in New Hampshire, and I have DSL service in there, and I pay for it all year because I want it, and it took a lot of convincing for the phone company to bring it out to an island. So we're almost with a similar situation here. You want people to sign up all the time so that Comcast says, oh, I'm going to make some money on this, because they're running a business. Sir?
What is your timeline for this?
We're doing this right away.
Yeah.
We're
In terms from Comcast, what is their timeline?
We'd like the process to be, methodical, if you will, in a good way. We want to look at things thoroughly and understand what the town's ascertained needs are. We obviously understand about the Benton Pond and Pond area and sauna. But knowing this group now as I do, I think that we could probably arrive at an acceptable, a good renewal license within a couple of months.
Yeah, if we can get all the issues dealt with. The group is pretty good. The committee is competent, and they're hardworking, and we have some folks who are really bright and retired at the same time, which is really nice. I mean, that's a good combination. So, we have every reason to want to get this done, as quickly as we can.
I have one other question. Prior to it being finalized, does it come back again?
We will definitely come back again. We're not going to do anything in the dark.
And the reason I'm saying that, to be completely upfront with you, the idea of the nonprofit, I, for one, would need to be convinced of the merit of that, okay? Because I'm more concerned about our stabilizing our finances in the town and how we're paying for things now. So if part of that is earmarked for technology today, I don't want that to suffer because we're talking about doing some kind of nonprofit thing. The other question that I have has to do with, I know that other towns do a nonprofit, but other towns have what they call a public access committee too.
That's what we would have.
Okay.
Absolutely have to have.
But that's not necessarily always a nonprofit.
Right, in this case it would be, yeah.
Okay. What I'm getting at is there are various options for how that committee would be organized. In some cases, it's an appointed committee.
Yep, I don't know, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
I don't want to sound cynical, but I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Delaney's question with regard to the timeline from Comcast. And I would like to see something in writing in terms of the timeline, because if it's verbal, it's not always binding. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me if they're willing and they say, okay, we're going to do this in X amount of time, then I think that needs to be, there need to be some strings attached before.
But don't we need to know about the polls from Unitil and all that first? So there's a couple of things that we need to do
So there's
before we can
there's
get there.
technical questions.
Right.
It seems like we've been talking about this for a long time.
I mean,
Well, this is a good time to do it, though. This is when
But
We were talking
it's
about this 10
renewing.
years ago before they even signed their last claim.
I mean, that's what I'm afraid of happening. It's just,
It's just 40 people out of the whole town. Of course, you're gonna sign the contract for the town. Well, what about these 40 people that
Right.
want the service? You're talking about a video service that we can't even watch.
Right.
A classroom in a school that we're not gonna be part of or privileged to.
That's why I said this is a hot button thing right now. This is the biggest area.
Yeah, just to flash back to the ice storm, Benton Pond area was out for 13 days during that ice storm, and we were over there when National Grid came in to help Unitil out.
Yeah.
And the foreman from National Grid, I had a conversation with him, he just could not believe the infrastructure that was on that street.
Yeah, how bad it is.
He said, not just the poles, but the wires. And if you walk that road, you walk Benton Pond Road, and you just look at that one main wire that comes up there, you can count the splices, the number of times that wire is broken. You can count them. I mean, it's just one after another, after another, after another up there.
Well,
So
then
that's
that
just-
sounds like we need to talk to Unitil a little bit more.
That's what I'm getting at.
That's what
right
we're
there.
going to
I mean,
do.
they really need to put some new infrastructure in there, along with the cable. It should be a combined effort.
That's what I was saying. It behooves Unitil to fix this to some degree.
Well, we also have meetings with Unitil, so that is something that we as a town can bring up with
But I'd
Unitil
like to-
as a separate.
I'd like to, I think the time for delay is over. I think they need, I think there's been enough talk about it, and I'm not saying that it's all on Comcast, because Unitil's obviously
They
part
own
of
the
the
poles.
solution as well. It's not just Comcast, it's Comcast and Unitil, because, you can't do one without the other. But I'd like to see some, I don't know how to put this, some backbone or some juice in this, and get it moving, and if pressure needs to be applied, then let's do it.
Yep.
I have a question, Andy. I understand that the committee's going to go and meet and Cable is going to meet with Unitil. That's fine. But if necessary, I would suggest that Unitil come in and talk to us, not about the cable access, but about this gentleman's other concern, which
The
is
infrastructure. Yeah.
the electric infrastructure, okay?
related to it.
Because if we have an issue with the electricity, that needs to be taken care of. And if the solution is new poles and wires and whatnot, and that will help facilitate the access to cable, that's gravy. But we should be addressing that Unitil issue as well. So I thank you for bringing that up, but I have no problem with inviting them in to talk to us as well,
Yes, thank you.
okay?
In the back?
for whatever time perspective, I've been about 4 years in conversation. I live on New Fitchburg Road.
Okay.
I'm the first house after the last drop of Comcast. So in other words, I'm 0.8 of a mile from Wyman Road to my
Okay.
house. And I started off talking to installation people. Installation people put me in touch with a salesman. The salesman got all hopped up on it. He started talking to neighbors about numbers of people who would pick it up, trying to get population density figures.
Mhm.
They then told me that the poles were too short and that their signal cable could not be as close as it had to be to the high tension wires. That was one of the figures. I have a conduit that runs from my house 600 feet down to the road, and it's all ready to be pulled through there for 4 years now. I've had the engineer out to the house. I've had a district supervisor, I think he was, or a superintendent or something, came out and talked to me. It all winds up the same way. We don't have a time commitment to this thing.
And the issue is the poles again?
Yeah, that's what it
Well,
sounds
I
like.
think we need to talk with Unitil.
So, too.
Maybe you could just start with a conversation
Sure.
with your contact there.
Yeah, if I could, Sue. Now, Steve, if the committee's able to negotiate an agreement with Comcast that includes the upgrade of the infrastructure, and as you've said, there's other parties involved, so it's not as easy as we'd like it to be. Would there also be a time, a schedule within the contract that says this is when this will happen by a date certain, or do you even know what that might look like to address the issue of timing that the residents have put?
The previous contract did have a whole number of streets that had date certains that had to be done. And in fact, as far as I know, those were done. These particular roads are in the old license as being contingent upon poles being replaced, and that's where we are. But so we need to, I think ultimately, we just have to get these poles replaced. It's a technical issue, it's a regulatory issue, they have to
So
be replaced.
theoretically, could you say something in the contract such as, once poles are supplied, new poles are supplied, we would have cable access within X amount of time after that? Is that something that we could put in the contract?
That's,
Okay.
it's
Should ask Comcast.
it's already,
Yes, no, I'm nodding.
yeah.
Yes,
No, but
that's,
I'd like to hear you say.
No, it's
I
not,
appreciate that, and I was going to, I didn't want to interrupt.
no, I'll say this publicly, I don't think there's anybody stonewalling on putting it in. As soon as the infrastructure is there, I think it would be put in right away, and it,
Well, within a certain number.
yeah, within, 60 days or.
Issue with the infrastructure, because for several years now, it's been, well, we can't run the cable because they gotta put the poles on. I said, well, we can't
Then
put
we
the
need to
poles on
talk
because
with you.
they won't run the cable.
okay, as long as we're gonna as long as we could put something in, if we could hear from our cable rep,
I'm sorry.
the amount of time approximately that it would take if we did get poles?
It depends partly on what time of the year it is.
Sure.
No, it really does,
Yeah.
because, with weather and other issues, and if our crew that would otherwise be stringing wires they're being reassigned to go fix wires that have been brought down in an ice storm.
Yeah, I'm sure that
So maybe
Unitil isn't going to be able
perhaps
to,
6 months, but I'd have to check with them.
but Unitil wouldn't be able to put poles up in the dead of winter either,
That's
so,
a good point,
you know.
we don't.
Yeah.
But within 2 months of
I
the
don't-
poles
I don't
being
know that
there,
it's
something like
months,
that?
really, because that kind of thing needs to be budgeted and planned for.
Okay.
And we have other projects that are already budgeted perhaps for that 2-month period. But I'm sure we would come to.
It would be
Okay.
reasonable, whatever it was.
All right, then as long as that could go in there, I think that would be fine, and it sounds like our conversation really needs to happen.
We did this last time, we put dates in, and it was all very reasonable.
Just for, Sue, if I could just jump in to give an example of what that conversion process looks like. If anybody's driven down to 495 lately on Route 119, there's a commercial project happening on the north side of 119.
Sure it is.
Widening the street, upgrading the power. They put in new poles several months ago. And they haven't finished moving all of the existing wire over. I think the electric is now moved over, at least the electric at the top of the pole, the higher tension electric. It does, and I'm not looking to defend anybody, it does take a while to get everybody coordinated. As Jane says, it has to be budgeted, it has to be programmed in. So even once the poles are in, it does take some time, but that's the critical first step.
It's Verizon that's slow.
Yeah.
Like in Littleton, that's the municipal
Is that
light
what's holding-
department.
Yeah, I
So
know.
they move the wires quickly. Verizon takes forever.
Quick question. However many poles need to be replaced or modified, do you have any kind of idea of how many existing poles can be modified so that would reduce the ultimate number of poles that would have to be replaced? Are there any existing poles that can be modified satisfactorily to do what needs to get done? So that they would, I mean, I'm just using this as an example. If there's 25 poles or 20 poles that need to be replaced, or however many, and they could modify half of those, so they only have to replace half the number, and that would make it more attractive and expedite the whole process. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you two would say, well, okay, we thought we'd have to do 20, now we only have to do 10. You know, it makes it that much. I mean, do you have any idea on that?
Yeah, there's a letter from 2008 to the Selectmen that specifies the poles that need to be replaced. One of the things we're gonna do is go look at these poles and see if some of them have already been replaced through the ice storm and the storms we've had, because this is 5 years old now, so. And I want to say that I've seen a Unitil truck on my street replacing poles in the last 5 years, at least a few of them after the storms that we've had, so.
How many do they have identified in
I
that
think
letter?
there was like 18 or 19, and that included Sonner Road also.
So it's probably less than that, obviously.
Maybe, we're going to physically go and look at them.
Well,
Because-
that'll be good ammunition to have with the discussion with Unitil.
Yes. And then I think the next step is, as Sue said, to have Unitil. We'll all sit down, Andy will be there, we'll tell them, we got, we got.
Well, they've come to our selectmen's meeting on our request before, and if that's necessary, we'll have them come in
Have
here.
them again.
Because that's not just an issue of cable access. It sounds like it's an issue of access for, for the electric.
Reliability of the infrastructure.
Okay,
Did Jim D come?
Jim is typically our rep.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
He's the
usually-
customer service.
He's usually who I talk with.
He does the petition stuff. John DiNapoli does a lot of the community relations
Yep,
stuff.
John, we talked to John.
Okay.
That would be good, because the power does go out down there when the wind blows.
Oh, yeah.
See?
Oh, you're from that area also?
That's not a good thing, obviously. That should be a pretty powerful message to Unitil that,
Right.
And
I'm not
considering,
trying to publicly embarrass them, but
They don't really care.
when the wind takes the power out, that's.
considering the DPU has already chastised them once for a weak infrastructure, we have more ammunition. Because that big ice storm, they really got down on them. So we have more ammunition than we had in 2008.
Well, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. Any more,
What you can do to help would be
yeah,
wonderful.
any more
We'll do our
comments
best.
about this? Okay, I think I'm done. Do you want to close the hearing?
Thank you. Everybody all set? Feel like you said what you
Thank you for
needed
coming,
to?
folks.
Yes, thank you. It was a good showing. Okay, I'd like to close the hearing at 7:58. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for your hard work.
you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Thanks to the committee.
Many thanks to the committee.
Second. Okay, cable committee. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Up to you. Come to one in December?
Oh, you. Okay, we'll wait for the crowd to clear just a second.
May I quickly introduce the new liaison to town, Ben Perlman?
Hi.
He'll be working with you for any.
Yeah, I guess you could.
Well, this gave you a good preview of us. Yeah, but no, we will work with Unitil because your hands are tied.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and it sounds like we've got some issues there, so that gives us a little bit more ammunition. I understand totally.
Where did you work previous to Comcast? You look awfully familiar.
I worked for Culture on the Island, and I worked in the state house.
Okay. Nope. I guess you have a familiar
What did you do with the
face.
state house?
You could just say,
What did you do with the state
I
house?
worked for Richard Strauss and a few overall, and it was land.
Then do you know Michelle Licio?
Very well. I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Great. She's great.
Yeah.
I think the mic's.
She's working. Yeah. She's working for the speaker now.
I was still around when she only when Comcast.
Well, I'll tell her I met you.
And then I miss her. So.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Andy Sheehan. Great. Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
I thought she was on oxygen. I thought she was on oxygen. The lady over there.
You don't get out much, do you?
We're still on here.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
When you invite Unitil in, is that going to be on open meeting that we can all?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would say stay tuned, but how about, but that's not gonna work. Do you know what, Andy? Could you,
I've got the list and
that would be wonderful.
phone number on the list.
Yes.
Karen can call you guys and let you know, okay? Thank you.
That's an excellent point. That's really the issue.
Yes.
Electricity. I mean, it's nice to have cable, but if you don't have electricity,
Okay, let's go, guys.
I'm ready to make the motion.
I believe it.
you wanna-
Okay, do you want to finish
wanna
the
go to
meeting
executive?
and then do executive after?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, we've got to go through the warrant still.
Right.
How much time do you think that's going to be?
Depends on the number of questions, 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. Could we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
I was looking forward to the other one, but adjourn for 5, please.
Recess of 5 minutes?
Recess for 5, please. And we will do 3.6, and then we'll adjourn, we'll do the executive session so that you don't have to wait around for us, okay?
Easy, easy.
Okay, you're back.
Call the meeting back to order. Welcome again. Okay, we have a couple of items left on the agenda. And I'm going to jump down to 3.6, review and discuss special town meeting warrant, and then go back to 2.2, which is executive session. We can just adjourn from that then, okay? Unless there's an objection. So, special town meeting warrant. Mr. Sheehan.
Okay, the special town meeting warrant was in your packets over the weekend. For those watching at home, just a reminder that special town meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, 7 PM on November 19th here at Town Hall, in the Great Hall. And we've got 20 articles?
I didn't count.
21 articles. And I'll give a quick summary of where we are on all of those, what the background is on them, and and some of the money amounts on the financial articles. So the first article is to pay prior year bills, and we have a number of bills from previous fiscal years. Anytime we close out a fiscal year on June 30th, any bill that hasn't been paid for that year has to go to town meeting in order to be paid after the fact. So we've got about $2,700 worth of late bills. A variety of things. There's some for the tree warden, for a tree contractor that we had to come in, some solid waste, and some miscellaneous office supply things. So it's fairly run-of-the-mill, but it does require town meeting action. Article 2 is an article. 2 and 3 are articles that we have every year on the special town meeting warrant. Article 2 is to transfer money from free cash into stabilization, what we call the stabilization fund. Stabilization fund is our rainy day fund. We have more than $1 million right now in our stabilization fund. We don't believe that there's a need to put additional funds in there at this point. So at this time, having spoke with Kim Fales today about this, we don't think that there's a compelling need to put money into that account. So we'll take no action on Article 2. Article 3 is the capital stabilization fund, and we're proposing to, at this time, to put $400,000 into capital stabilization.
How much?
$400,000.
Okay.
Good.
200,000 of that is for the debt service on the Spalding School roof that we've been paying over the last couple of years. And the other 200,000 would be for regular general fund capital purchases, whether it's vehicles or road work, building-related improvements, things like that. And the capital planning committee will be working on that over the next few months. Article 4 is the article to fund our union contracts. We are in the process of wrapping up contracts with all of those 4 units, police, fire, highway, and telecommunications. We expect to, we're hopeful to have contracts in place by the 19th so that we can take action on those. I don't have dollar amounts at this time. And won't until we actually have agreements ratified. Article 5 is a request from the police department for money for update to the phone system. The phones have been acting up at the police station. Obviously, that is a problem when we have unreliable phones at a public safety operation. And so the chief has requested $9,800 for improvements to the phone system at the police station. That would come out of free cash. And as I'm sitting here rummaging through my paperwork, it occurred to me that I didn't bring my free cash calculation with me, I don't think. So We did have more than 900,000 in free cash this year. We just got our certification the other day, so.
Has a contract been signed with a company to install the new phones, you know?
There's not a contract. The chief has solicited quotes, and, but I don't know, I don't recall offhand who the low quote was.
So he's got his bid process?
Yeah, he's got a firm number on that. That's where he came up with,
Good.
with 9806. The free cash, just to back up a minute, free cash was $931,378. So we closed out fiscal year 13, which ended on June 30th, and we had a surplus of $931,000, which is a good number for us. It's the highest we've had in probably since fiscal 2010, I would say. So that's where some of the town meeting funding will come from, is that free cash amount. Article 6 is one we talked about briefly with the additional funding for the health administrator. That's $630. Article 7 is an article from the town clerk. She's requested additional funds in case we decide to have a special election for the fire station. This is one that we've been going on the premise that we will not have a special election for the fire station. If we go ahead and approve Article 7 and then we don't have a special election, then that additional $5,100 would just close to free cash next year.
Okay.
So, and that would be something that would take out of free cash. So there'd be no need to alter.
So that's just putting it there in case we need it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Article 8 is one that we see, we've seen a number of times in recent years, a supplement for the veterans' benefits. With an economy such as ours and with a number of overseas activities going on, we've got a lot of veterans and surviving spouses that have made claims for benefits. That tends to be very unpredictable, and we've had a spike recently, so we think that an additional $10,000 is needed to get us through the end of the fiscal year.
And Joe Mazzolo does a great job. I mean,
He does,
He's
yep.
really, I deal with veterans agents from other towns, and Joe Mazzolo is really, does an outstanding job.
Yeah, he's on top of it, and he keeps us informed of where benefits are going, so. Article 9 is related to the interim treasurer. We're proposing to transfer an additional $14,000 out of what we call raise and appropriate out of the tax levy to fund treasurer-related operations. Some of it is for wages, $10,000 in wages, and $4,000 for expenses for certain charges that we didn't have covered that we need to take into account. Article 10 was a sort of a placeholder. We've got a couple of projects that we're looking at this year in the facilities department. However, at this time, I'm going to recommend that we take no action on Article 10. Article 11 is sort of related to 13. It may be one that on the floor of town meeting we take no action on, but it's to amend the capital plan. That was approved back in May. The wording in Article 13 for the fire headquarters does the same purpose. I threw Article 11 on more as a placeholder in case there was anything else that came up for capital.
I see that as kind of confusing. So this is because of the land part of the fire?
Not necessarily. It was on there initially as a placeholder in case there were any other capital projects that needed to be addressed. The police department phones that I talked about earlier, initially we thought that might come in over $10,000. So we had put a placeholder on for the capital, a generic placeholder for
Okay.
capital planning.
Okay.
If you skip ahead to 13, maybe this will help to clear it up. At the end of Article at the end of Article 13, it says, "and further to amend the capital plan."
Okay,
So that is specific to the fire
to
station.
the fire station. All right, so this one was for anything else that was going to be over the $10,000.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right, I'm okay now. Thank you.
Article 12 is we had this on the Springtown meeting. The cemetery department did some land clearing
Yeah.
on a couple of parcels last year. They brought in a little over $19,000. They have asked that we transfer that money out of free cash and put it into their cemetery improvement account. We think it makes sense that that they get to have the benefit of the revenue that was raised on that. Article 13.
Andy, I have a question. When we do something like that, basically that goes into their budget, right? How does the fact that they came up with $19,000 that they didn't get through regular means affect them when it comes time for doing the budget for next year? Because if we say, you know, everybody needs to stay within 2.5%, that kind of muddies the water a little bit, because
the cemetery improvement, the cemeteries are a little bit different, and cemetery improvement accounts can be used for a variety of projects and purposes. They transfer money.
So is it separate from their operating?
It is,
Okay.
and it can supplement their operation.
Then that should be fine.
Yeah, we transfer money out of there at town meeting in May to supplement their operations,
Okay.
offset the cost of their operations. So this will sort of replenish that account, and it also gives them a place where they can draw funds if they have an unexpected purchase or something like that.
Okay.
Article 13 is the fire headquarters project. We've talked about that a number of times over the last couple of months. The appropriation amount that is requested by the Fire Station Building Committee is $11,313,000. That covers everything from the acquisition of the land to the design of the building and the entire project, all of the site work, the dirt moving, everything, and the construction of the building and furnishing of the building. So obviously it's a significant outlay. We expect that will be a topic of conversation at town meeting.
And the thought is that that would be a debt exclusion.
Correct, yes. Thank you, I'm glad you brought that up. We would not go forward with the next step on this project until after the annual election in April. April 28th is our election. We would have a debt exclusion question on there in order to allow us to borrow and increase the limits under Proposition 2.5, so that we could borrow above the 2.5% ceiling. It needs both town meeting and town election in that case.
So if we are waiting, then why do we need that extra money for the town clerk, for the?
I think it's worth keeping in there because there's some people that are concerned that we may go ahead and borrow the money anyways and not wait for the election. Tried to tell them that we wouldn't do that, and only the treasurer with the agreement of the town, of the Board of Selectmen can borrow money. But there could be a motion, I think, to amend on the floor of town meeting to make this what's known as a contingent appropriation, that it would be contingent on an override. If it's a contingent appropriation, the election, the override election has to occur within 90 days of the close of town meeting.
I see.
So we wouldn't have the option of waiting until April. We'd have to do something within 3 months of town meeting.
That's right, the contingency binds you to the time frame.
Correct. It's a little longer in the spring if it's an annual town meeting, but in the case of a special town meeting, you have 90 days.
Well, that should be a good discussion.
I would assume so. We have a couple of bylaw changes. Article 14, we've talked about before. This would, if adopted by town meeting, would allow the Board of Selectmen to allow liquor establishments to open as early as 10 o'clock on Sundays. These are only on-premises sales, so restaurants and bars. Would not apply to package stores. Article, and it's not a blanket, it's not an automatic 10 o'clock opening. Each holder of a license would have to ask the board for permission in their license to open at 10.
So will this, will the actual wording for the change to the law be available for folks? The reason I'm saying that is I've heard people ask that question before, because it doesn't say anything about it needs to be a restaurant establishment, and it's contingent upon approval.
Well, I think the key, just by, may.
Sure.
It's authorized holder of on-premises alcohol licenses. So that would kind of narrow the.
It's only restaurants, right?
Huh?
Well, I'm not sure. What is an on-premises alcohol license?
A restaurant.
Where you consume on premises, but you
Well, I
raise a
mean,
good point, because
How does that relate to,
doesn't.
yes, and how does that relate to VFW or, special licenses too? So it just,
I see what you're
rather
saying, yeah, yeah.
than confuse people, I think, for us to be prepared to
a good
say precisely what this means.
It's a good point.
Okay, that number one, they have to come to us for the approval, even though the law says they can apply for it.
Right.
And who is it that's allowed to? Okay?
So, in other words, what you're saying basically is,
I don't want it to be a special,
Yeah,
like somebody wants to have a Jack and Jill shower that starts at 10 o'clock on a Sunday,
right.
and that they can start selling alcohol at 10 o'clock. I just
No, I know what you're saying.
think it needs to be clear.
That's a good point.
Okay.
So you want us to get rid of the bureaucratic language?
No, I want a translation for the bureaucratic language for us regular
And,
people.
yeah, we can do that.
How about, would it have
Our
to be
non-
where food is consumed?
Well, we'd just make it clear what it means when we say an on-premises license holder.
Just
That's
to
a good
be
point.
prepared to talk about that.
The language has to read like this, but we can clarify that certainly so that people understand it
So we
and
can
feel
put
comfortable with it.
parentheses after on,
Yeah, I'll work with council to see how best to word that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good point. Good catch.
Article 15 is the medical marijuana moratorium. This would put essentially a one-year moratorium in place so that marijuana dispensaries could not open in town until at the earliest, the end of 2014, calendar year 2014. In the interim, we would be looking at zoning changes that would regulate the medical marijuana establishments. Article 16 is a long one, and we're all hopeful that it won't have to be read on the floor. It's about 10 pages long, but it is sponsored by the planning board, and it would regulate wind energy systems, basically windmills. We, as a general rule, were perceived as not being attractive for wind. We have a lot of hills. We have a lot of wind on those hills, but there's an accepted industry practice or industry standard for average wind speed. We don't quite meet that, so at this time, it's not advantageous or economical for a wind turbine project here or a wind farm. However, with changes in incentives, tax credits, things like that, or maybe advances in technology, it could be that before too long, it becomes advantageous to locate here in town. So this would protect us, would establish standards for the siting of wind energy systems. So the planning board will be talking about this one. Article 17 is one that we've talked about before. This would amend some of the fees that the tax collector, town treasurer can charge. Most of these are on the order of $5 now, and that doesn't even come close to covering our actual costs. So by the adoption of Chapter 60, Section 23B, we can increase those fees in order to actually recover our costs. Article 18 and 19 are both related to solid waste. The first one, Article 18, would allow would change the recycling bylaw to authorize what we call non-criminal disposition ticketing. And then Article 19 identifies who the enforcement agent is in this. This is the Municipal Recycling Enforcement Coordinator. The board at the last meeting, Sue, I think specifically, raised the issue of where that is a grant-funded position, the Municipal Recycling Enforcement Coordinator. When the funding goes away for that position, it's unenforceable, and I've brought that to the attention of the Board of Health, and I'm hoping that they'll come back in time for town meeting with
An amendment.
a second agent identified. Yep.
Or something more generic.
Correct, and they could leave the enforcement coordinator and add to that, or other designee, other person designated by the Board of Health or something
Okay.
to that effect.
Thank you.
And then Articles 20 and 21 are sales of town-owned land. Article 20 is a piece of tax title land that we own that the Mass Division of Fisheries and Wildlife would like to buy. It is adjacent to land that they own and is attractive to them. Three benefits to the town. The land would remain as open space. It would become protected open space. We would get the proceeds from the sale. The state would pay us for the land, and the state has told us that they would have no objection to us logging the property before we sell it to them. So we would get some proceeds from the logging. Unclear at this point what that would be. We haven't taken the evaluation or the analysis to that level yet.
And do we know what the pilot is on this?
The pilot is determined by a formula. It's kind of like school funding.
Yeah.
Nobody really understands
And
it.
now I'm actually thinking back to a meeting that we had where we were questioning how they arrived at our pilot number.
I think that was because they gave us a smaller amount.
Yeah.
The pilot funding was
And
reduced
we
in the state
never
budget.
ended up getting any closure explanation
Yeah,
on that. So
the-
there's another to-do.
The sort of short and sweet on that one was the state budget didn't appropriate the amount to fund all of the pilots at 100%.
Oh, kind of like Chapter 90?
Kind of like Chapter 90, or Chapter 70, or any other chapter that, any local aid. And so they just reduced proportionately across the board.
But I thought that our proportion didn't look in proportion, and that was the question.
Yeah,
And
I
I
can,
thought we were going to look into that.
we can look,
bit more.
see what I can find out on that.
That'd be great. Because sometimes I think we're really losing by depending on pilot. When we transfer property to the state, I want to make sure we're not losing money.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out on that. And then the last article, Article 21, is somewhat similar. This is two parcels of land in a subdivision. When the planning board approved the subdivision, I believe it was approved in 1989, it required that two parcels of open space be deeded to the Conservation Commission. The State Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, again, owns land adjacent to this subdivision. It's landlocked, they don't have access to it, and they have approached us and inquired about buying that land from us. So the land would continue to remain in open space, protected open space, and we would get the benefit of the revenue out of that. So it's a little more cumbersome process because it's because of the steps that would have to be gone through, but a lot of that would be taken care of by Fish and Game.
Okay.
And that's it. As always, we're hopeful that a single evening will suffice to get us through town meeting, but you never know.
You had a couple of other things in the packet. Notice of vacancy for the, okay, that was this one, Andy. Was that just a response to the one that we got? Because we had an applicant that we just appointed.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that was
went
just
along
the
with that.
background. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
just because sometimes the board asks
Yep.
about the posting and when it was put up.
Thank you. So, everybody all set on the special? Okay. Let's move on to 3.6. No, that was 3.6. Let's go back to 2.2.
Do you want to do, work session
Oh, yeah,
stuff
let's
and
do
then-
work session stuff. 5.1, Board of Selectmen updates or reports.
I have something I'd like to announce.
Okay.
In a couple of weeks, my wife and I should be closing on selling of our home, and if all goes well, I'll be resigning my position on the Board of Selectmen. So I can't give an exact date at this particular point, but I'd like to know, the public out there to know that, it's been almost 9 years, and I've really enjoyed my time on the board and seen a lot of things happen and been a part of a lot of positive changes in the town, and it's been a pleasure serving with both of you, but again, I will not submit the resignation until it's official, so leave it at that. Okay.
Oh, Bob. You're really gonna leave us.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you.
It's the right
I-
thing for you, though.
I will miss Townsend. I will stay in contact with friends I have made here 26 years, but I, quite frankly, will not miss the state of Massachusetts.
Any particular
He's going to New Hampshire.
Let's just say my politics is not conducive to Massachusetts. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
That's a shocker, huh?
Well, let us know when it is official.
I will.
I'm just going to make believe you didn't even say anything. Anything else?
I have several things.
Okay.
I want to make an announcement that the Townsend VFW post number 6538, its Ladies Auxiliary, its Men's Auxiliary, and American Legion post 199 and its Ladies Auxiliary will honor all those Americans who currently serve in the military and all veterans of earlier generations, including those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to maintain our country's freedom, at a Veterans Day ceremony to be held at VFW Park Monument in West Townsend on Monday, November 11th, beginning at 11 a.m. The public is cordially invited and encouraged to attend the observance. Light refreshments will be served in the 491 Main Street, West Townsend VFW Function Hall following the ceremony. And also, on Sunday, December 1st, there will be a tree lighting ceremony on the Townsend Common, hosted by the Townsend Ecumenical Outreach and the Townsend Business Association. It starts at, I believe it's 5 o'clock, and it is good, wholesome family fun.
There's also a breakfast for the veterans that the high school student council puts on. It's Friday morning. It's this Friday morning, too. Anything else? There is a, I hope was well-attended meeting, community forum for the building committee for the high school. It was taking place tonight at the library in Townsend. There are 2 others scheduled. You don't have to go to the one that's in your town. If you missed ours tonight, there's one in Ashby and another one in Pepperell. Important information, pre-information, as well as a chance to give your opinions about the new high school. And your input is much appreciated. Anything else? Town administrator updates and reports.
A couple of things, I'll try to be quick. Just a reminder again, special town meeting is on November 19th here at Town Hall at 7 p.m. Tuesday night, 2 weeks from tonight. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we've got a number of committee vacancies. We've still got vacancies on the Energy Committee, the Planning Board, the Charter Committee, and the Fire Chief Screening Committee. And for a full list and more info on all of those, you can check out our website and find out what those all entail. We also still need, as we always do, on-call firefighters and on-call EMTs. So if anybody has that background or that inclination, you should check out the website as well and talk to the fire chief. Had some conversations in the last few days with Unitil. They've acquired a couple of devices called kilowatts, Kill-A-Watt. It is a measuring device. It measures how much electricity is used by appliances and things in your house. They're going to donate, I believe they're donating 2 of these units to us on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So if any board members are around, Colin is going to try to make it. We're going to do they're going to donate them to us on Friday. Those will be available for residents to borrow and see how much your TV uses or how much your cell phone charger uses when it's not in use. So it's something they've done in a number of communities. Other utilities have done it as well. So we appreciate it. We'll take good advantage of that.
Also a good time for, if you're questioning purchasing a new appliance that's more energy efficient, that might help you make the decision.
Yeah, you take that information from the kilowatt and then you go and you look at the Energy Star label on the fridge that you're shopping
Right.
for. Give you a good indication of what you're going to be saving or not saving. Reminder again, the Devon's Household Hazardous Waste Facility will be open November and December, and then closed for the next couple of months, doesn't reopen again until March. So
What are the dates again?
it's open tomorrow and Saturday, 9 to noon, and then again on December 4th and 7th, also 9 to noon, Wednesday, Saturday. The town clerk informed me today that we have a Townsend Ecumenical Outreach donation box here at Town Hall on the first floor, so if anybody wants to make donations as we head towards the holiday season, that's always welcome. Food and non-perishable foods, things like that, so help people out. Our local regional planning agency, the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, is sending out a survey to a couple of neighborhoods. They're doing a grant project for us to the School Street and forgot the other location. I apologize for that. But if residents receive a survey in the mail, we would ask that you quickly respond to that, fill out the information. It's all, it's demographic information, but it's all anonymous, so nobody will know who is responding. But in order to access certain federal funding, what we call CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funding, we have to be able to prove, or MRPC in this case has to prove that the majority of households fall below a certain income limit, and that's what this survey will try to determine. So we'll have some more information as that process rolls forward. So at this time, it's just the survey. And then a shout out to the high school marching band. The North Middlesex Regional Marching Band won a gold medal last week at a competition over in Lowell for the Mass Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association. So
That's wonderful.
Good for them.
nice, got a nice call today from somebody asking to spread the word on that, and we're, as she said, let's say some good things about the kids. We hear too many bad things, and
Good job.
That's excellent.
agree with that. So nice to
Congratulations.
see them do that.
Congratulations.
And the football team also made the playoffs this year, but I think they lost their first game. So, but,
Andy, could we write a letter of congratulations
Sure.
to them, please? From us?
and that's all I've got.
Okay. 5.3, review and sign payroll warrant.
I make a motion that we sign the payroll warrant out of session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5.4, review and sign bills payable warrant.
I make a motion that we sign the bills payable warrant out of session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 2.2, Colin?
I make a motion that we enter executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, regarding collective bargaining and litigation, and adjourn from the meeting.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, this needs roll call, please.
Colin McNabb, aye.
Bob Plamond, and aye.
Sue Lucio, aye. So we will be adjourning from the executive session. Good night.
Good night.